although nobody signs up for your newsletter because they care about your family or your dog or your personality. They come for the information. But the reason they connect and I think ultimately call you is because they like you. They feel like there's a connection. And I think that's the missed piece for a lot of small professionals like us. We're concerned that we're not going to be taken seriously or look professional, that we get rid of all that stuff. And I think that's the key advantage we have relative to the faceless companies.
You're listening to Michael Katz, who writes one of my all-time favorite email newsletters. Why? Because Michael's emails are loaded with personality, yet he always slips in terrific advice on the topic at hand. For years, Michael has written newsletters for and helped service-based solopreneurs establish their own email newsletters. So as you might expect, Michael has a wealth of practical tips for doing just that. And you're about to hear them now, because Michael is today's guest on Solopreneur Success.
Welcome to the Solopreneur Success Podcast, where successful business owners gather to share true stories and sound advice to help you start and grow your own solopreneur business. Come soar with us and design the life you love. Now, here's your host, Steve Combs.
Hello, solopreneurs. Today I'm interviewing Michael Katz. He calls himself the chief penguin at Blue Penguin Development, but really, as the Likeable expert on e-newsletters, Michael's the guy that I turn to when I'm looking for fresh ideas for writing exciting and interesting email newsletters for myself and for my clients. And I've been really looking forward to this conversation. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Michael, I've been reading your email newsletter for many years myself, and I don't even remember where I first heard of you actually at this point. It's been a long time. I regularly enjoy reading them. And it makes sense because you are the guy that people turn to learn how to write entertaining and enjoyable newsletters, things that people actually love to read, which is important because if they don't read it, who cares? But for those who aren't familiar with how powerful of a business tool e-newsletters can be, why do they even matter?
Well, I stumbled onto email newsletters. So I always say that I came to it honestly. I wasn't planning to be in the newsletter business. I left my job in 2000 to become a marketing consultant. And I just started publishing. It wasn't even a newsletter back then. There was no such thing in 2000. There was no Constant Contact or MailChimp. But I liked the internet. It was a big thing then. And I used to write about it every couple of weeks. And I'd email it to people, maybe 30 people that I had worked with. And when I left, kept doing it. And what happened was people started to ask to be added to the list, which is normal today, but was really weird back then. Like, who are you? But okay. But what happened was because I was putting useful content out there and I wasn't trying to sell anything because I was just writing, a lot of things, good things happened for my business. People would call me, people wanted to have lunch, people would invite me to speak. And eventually I realized it was because I was staying in front of people with this no strings attached useful information that they were coming to me. And so that became the key marketing tool that I use and still use. And I find it works really well for professionals. All my clients are professional service providers, coaches, writers, consultants, who are really good at what they do, but, we're kind of suspicious of marketing and hate selling. And this sort of gets rid of that, but still causes the phone to ring. So it's been a great tool.
Yeah, and it really can be. And it's funny because a lot of people that are in business, they think of, I have to provide great content. But what really sets you apart, in my mind, is it's not just great content. It's beyond that. It's personality infused. It has the ability to make a connection with the reader in a way that kind of reveals who you are kind of behind the scenes and makes you a real person and not just like a faceless corporation. Here's, the tip of the day, which is great. And a lot of people have a lot of success with those kind of newsletters. But I guess, have you always been kind of a humorous personality? Has that always shined through in your newsletters? Because that's what I've always noticed in your newsletters.
I think I've always been that way, but that was not the way I approached marketing when I worked for a faceless corporation for 12 years. It was all about the offer and volume and repeating, advertising over and over again. So this was a totally new thing to me. Here too, I kind of stumbled on it accidentally because I was not trying to sell anything. I didn't really see this as related to my business. I had a lot of freedom to just kind of be authentic because why not? But what I noticed, and it took me a while to realize, was that although nobody signs up for your newsletter because they care about your family or your dog or your personality. They come for the information. But the reason they connect and I think ultimately call you is because they like you. They feel like there's a connection. And I think that's the missed piece for a lot of small professionals like us. We're concerned that we're not going to be taken seriously or look professional, that we get rid of all that stuff. And I think that's the key advantage we have relative to the faceless companies. Like Procter & Gamble can't tell you what they did over the weekend. It's very, it's well-written, shiny stuff. We can. And again, I think the reason people hire us, whatever it is you do, is, you have to be good at what you do. Problem is, everyone you compete with is just as good. And even if you're a little bit better in whatever it is, I can't tell as a potential client. Like I always say, you don't know how medically capable your own doctor is. And it doesn't actually matter. As long as she went to medical school and got out, she's fine. And so are 1,000 other doctors. If you like your doctor, it's because the way she talks to you, because they treat you in the office, whatever it is. So this squishy stuff I discovered is actually the secret weapon for small companies, especially tiny companies, which is the only people I work with, 5 people or fewer down to solos. And so now I deliberately do it. And I end up kind of coaching my clients because everyone's reluctant at first to reveal too much of that stuff.
Yeah, it can be a vulnerable to put yourself in a place where it's like, okay, this is what happened, and it may be rather personal at sometimes what you share. And of course, there has to be a balance there. I think how much you don't want to overshare with the professional audience,
Right.
But at the same time, that's part of building a relationship. It's really about people getting to know who you are as an individual, as why should I work with this person? Because we are more than just one set of skills. We are an individual that we're going to communicate together. We're going to work together, perhaps even side by side, depending on the service business it is. And is this somebody who I really do like and know and trust? And that comes out through the personality sharing you have in the newsletters. And that's exactly what you do. And now you said you had a job and you left it in 2000. And I think you were like an MBA, if I recall correctly. So what were you doing prior to getting into the marketing realm? Were you doing marketing then?
Yes, I'm embarrassed to say I worked for the cable company. But the contrast to me was, so yes, I was in marketing for 12 years. It had nothing to do with marketing as a solo. I mean, I had a huge budget. I had a staff. I had a brand name that people recognized. And none of that stuff relates now to me as a solo. Even after all this time that I've been on my own, I don't have any of that. So it didn't transfer over, which was kind of a shock because I had been used to, I give somebody your business card and they recognize the company name. And it was also, even though we all think of marketing as creative, marketing at a huge company like that is a numbers job. It's, it's all spreadsheets and stuff like that. It's not particularly creative. And so I find this is a much better fit for me. I mean, my job was fine, but this is a totally different world than marketing in a big company.
Yeah, it definitely is. And now you not only write email newsletters, I take it you still write email newsletters for clients, right?
Yeah.
But you also teach people how to do that. So how does that balance your business? You kind of do both now. So how does that look like in your day-to-day business as far as teaching people how to write newsletters as opposed to you writing for them? And what's the differences there?
So it's probably half and half. I mean, at one point, 10 years ago, probably 85% of what I did was newsletters. But then the longer I'd been on my own, the more people would come to me and say, hey, I want to work for myself and you seem to have survived. Can you help me? And so I started getting into more of this sort of coaching thing. And so it's not all newsletter. I still do, again, half of it is newsletters. But the other half is some type of helping you set up and run your own business. So I do webinars, I have some products, and then I mostly work one-on-one with people on what's sort of generically called marketing communications. So I'm helping people, everything from what do you say when someone says, what do you do for a living, to what's on LinkedIn and your homepage and your newsletter. And basically, how do you present yourself in a usually written way to the outside world? Because people like us don't have advertising budgets, we all live off of word of mouth. What I found is, and still find, is that most people think word of mouth is luck, like finding money on the street. Can't make it happen. What I found is it's random, but it's not luck. The better you are at explaining what you do, in a way that other people can remember it and understand it, the more likely they are to tell other people about you. That's all word of mouth is. And that's really all a newsletter is. It's a very scalable way to stay top of mind. And along the way, people sort of figure out what you do. And a tiny percentage of them hire you. I mean, it's not a lot, but it doesn't have to be, because it costs me nothing to send one more person a newsletter. So as long as I keep publishing, some portion of those people talk about you, call you. And as you said, they feel like they know you, even though they really don't. So it makes the conversation much easier, because it's not really a stranger thing. Like, it's funny how I'll have complete strangers ask me about, like, my kids, very specifically, like, how's your son in Memphis? I don't even know who they are. But when you think of how selling works, if you trust the other person, that's a big difference. And again, since I don't really know anything about selling, I found that very helpful, especially in the beginning. And again, I find my clients who are all professionals like that, they just want to do the work, but you have to have clients. So this really helps in that way.
Yeah, and you're right. It doesn't take, especially for solopreneurs, it doesn't take a whole lot of clients for us to make a very good living. I usually have any given time a handful of clients. I'm not sure how many it takes for you to make a great living, but most solopreneurs can find, at 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 clients, they're more than capable of creating the lifestyle that they desire. And it doesn't take a whole lot. And like you said, if you build a newsletter, it's not luck. It's about that long-term relationship building, and clients or potential clients may not need you today, but they're going to remember you. And then next year or 2 years down the road, even, it's like, oh, I need somebody who can do X, Y, Z. And this is a person who I've been loving their newsletter all this time. And I trust them. I know who they are. And I'm going to reach out to that person first. And so you have like a hidden advantage there built in, just because you've built that relationship over time. And like you said, it doesn't cost you a second longer but you're running everybody else anyways.
Right. I mean, I always say, like, I don't spend any time trying to talk to people I don't know. I just try and continually stay in front of the people I do know. And people I know defined as, if I called you up, I wouldn't have to introduce myself. That's a pretty big group of people for all of us. It's not just clients. It's people you know. The problem is, you meet somebody at an event, like, we met recently down at an event in Florida. So a bunch of people, no matter how good the conversation is, you're not going to keep in touch with those people. But my approach has always been, if I invite you to get my newsletter and you say yes, now I can stay in touch with you. And so it's this little machine that's kind of churning in the background, and that even though you may forget who they are, you keep being in front of them. And I have that happen all the time. People will say, I've been on your list for 5 years, and now I'm calling you. So I think whether it's a newsletter, or podcast like you're doing, or even just working your network, I think the mistake a lot of us make is we're so busy trying to be found by strangers, whether that's Google or even something like Twitter or Instagram, which are stranger-based. But we ignore all these people we know. I try and stay in touch with the people I know, and I find that makes a big difference. It's not a ton of people. But as you said, most people like us, we don't need thousands or even hundreds of clients in a given year. You need, dozens maybe.
The most, right. And I like what you said about networking too, because you actually do some in-person networking, and you have a great event. I've actually been down here a couple of times with my boys. You're right across the border. I live in New Hampshire, and you're down in Massachusetts. And I'd love for you to kind of share with our audience, because I think it was just a fascinating, terrific idea. I love what you do. Just tell us what you do every year.
Yeah. So on my 5th anniversary, I had a coach at the time, and she said, well, what are you going to do to celebrate your 5th year in business? And I said, I don't know, like, go home early. And she's like, no, you have to do something. So I just came up with this idea that I would host an ice cream party at a place, very popular ice cream place in Massachusetts called Kimball Farms. And I invite everyone on my newsletter to come, and I pay for the ice cream. And I probably get, 40, 45 people show up. I've done it now 15 years in a row since my 5th anniversary. And it's just completely informal. Usually half the people I've never met, even though often I've talked to them because they've been on the list in some way. But it turned out to be a really good thing. I didn't start it as a way to generate business, but often what happens is someone will talk to me at the party, and the next thing you know, we're doing some work together. But I like it because anyone can do it, or anything like that. It does not cost me a lot of money. And I think hosting is a good thing to do. In fact, another example is maybe every couple of months, I will invite a dozen solo professionals to come to my office, where we have this nice conference room in the office building I'm in, for a couple of hours. It's free. We'll pick a topic like pricing or isolation and working alone. And we just sit around for a couple of hours, 12 people, because that's all I can fit in the conference room. And there's no agenda other than that. There's no cost, but it's a way for people to get to know each other. But because I'm hosting it, it's like I'm networking with 12 people all at once, and I don't even have to leave my office. And the whole thing costs me some donuts and, a couple of things of coffee from Starbucks. So anyone can do it. I think people are often thinking, well, who am I to do this kind of thing? But it's really easy to host an event like that. Could be an online thing. I find that people like us like to get together with other people because, we work alone and a lot of people feel isolated. So just an opportunity to do that. But it's a good way to enhance your relationships without a lot of commitment or cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember we talked about that. We were having lunch together down at this AWI boot camp. We actually met it in the spring. And I was shocked how actually affordable it was for you to do ice cream for 40, 50 people. I was actually floored. Just how inexpensive it really was. If you think about it, you put it together compared to doing a big event or something. Right. And yet it's a very entertaining way to meet people and really grow a kind of a face-to-face relationship and put a face to a name. And like you said, you can even bring some business out of it.
Yeah, I've been to things other people have done. I know a guy who invites people. All he does is says, we're all going to meet at this hotel bar. It's 6:00 on a Wednesday, so there's nobody there. And everybody buys their own drink and we sit around. He doesn't pay anything. And all we have in common is that we know him. But so there's, 10 people or whatever talking, chatting. And again, because he's the instigator of it, it's like he is sort of super networker for that event. I know two people who occasionally will rent a hotel room and like a little, place that you could probably seat 15 people in it. And they just, they have to pay for breakfast or something. And same thing, people just connect. So I think there's a lot of opportunities if you're a little bit creative and you don't need permission. You can just do it.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because you don't need permission. Just,
right.
Reach out to people you already know and say, hey, let's strengthen this connection we have here. Maybe you have something in your business that you can be a help to somebody, or maybe it's just simply, hey, let's just meet face to face and get out of the office for a bit, or just get out of the lonely sphere of everyday business, which is nice.
Right.
And that's great. So I know you work a lot with, you said it's businesses that are 5 people or less down to solopreneurs. So who would be your best clients? How do you typically work with somebody that comes to you brand new? Maybe they've been on your email list for a little while, but what happens when somebody comes out, reaches to you and says, hey, Michael, can you help me with this newsletter? Or can you teach me how to write a newsletter? Yeah. How does that process start with you?
Well, so I find the difference. My biggest client, probably 15 people. The difference, and they're all professional service. Again, I don't work with anybody who sells stuff or they're not in retail or something. They're all, financial planners, consultants, recruiters, writers, coaches. So they have, when it comes to marketing, it's kind of all the same. Also, the difference between a 15-person company and a solo in terms of marketing is kind of zero. I always say there's nobody in the company who has the word marketing in their title. Once there's a marketing person inside, they see me as threatening and all that stuff. But it's usually, a professional service firm. Let's say they're consultants and the founder has 3 or 4 people working for him or her. Sometimes it's just straight, hey, we need a newsletter because we believe that this thing's helpful. But other times, and this is more the case with solos, it's that they don't know how to talk and write about themselves in a way that's both clear and compelling. So I sort of sit on the line between coaching and consulting. Coaching, you're not supposed to tell people what to do, but I'm not an official trained coach. But at the same time, it's consulting I think of as I do it for you. So it's a little of both. It depends on who the person is, but I work with them to first figure out what does make you different and what is your authentic voice and who's your target audience and what are you actually selling? It's not usually what they think it is. You're not selling financial planning, you're selling, security or whatever.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, how do we boil this stuff down so that when someone you meet at a networking meeting says, what do you do for a living? You don't just blah, blah, blah for 10 minutes and they don't know what you do. So, and then again, there is always some writing element, whether it's their LinkedIn or their webpage or whatever. And so it's under the umbrella of marketing communications. Different people need different things. And since the numbers, as you said, are small, it's all customized based on what they want. I don't have a machine or a formula I run through. But I find there's like 80% overlap in terms of what people need. And it's usually a couple of months, sometimes a 3-month kind of thing. And away we go.
I think it's very interesting. You mentioned about how I'm not a trained coach, but I don't think you need to be a trained coach either. I think what you need to do is be able to help people where they're at to get to the next level. And I think that any good coach, that's what you provide. You help somebody move from where they are today to where they want to be tomorrow. And I agree. That's what you do.
I always qualify just because I have a lot of clients who are coaches and who are, certified and trained. I mean, there is a technique to coaching, which, although I hope I'm good at what I'm doing, I don't claim to be, a quote, real coach.
Gotcha.
I don't do assessments and I didn't. So again, but if you think about coaching and consulting, that, I'm sort of in the middle there.
Yeah. And that totally makes sense, especially the way you approach business and help people move forward in that direction. So let's say somebody is starting their newsletter. You kind of mentioned part of this already, which is, defining really what do you offer. And it's like you said, it's not financial services, it's security or what have you, whatever you're offering there. Besides defining what you do, what would be the first step of saying, okay, you're going to start a newsletter from day zero.
Yeah.
What do you do first? Besides obviously defining what that message, core message is, how do you get started?
Well, so I always use the metaphor of a newsletter as like a magazine, or maybe it's an analogy on it. So if you were going to start a magazine, there's some basic stuff. First of all, you wouldn't sit there and go, what are we all about back here? The first question would be like, who is this for? And what's the magazine about? And I find that people start from the perspective of, what am I about? What do I want people to know about me? That's important to you, but nobody reading your magazine actually cares at all. So it's always, who's the audience? And a lot of times people be like, well, it could be anything. And I'm like, yeah, I know it could be anybody, but you need to target your audience. Like there's a difference between Sports Illustrated and Sports Illustrated for kids. It's the same stuff, but it's completely different. The second thing then is, and I'll say to people, what's your magazine about? It's not about your company. Again, with Sports Illustrated, it's not about Time Inc. It's what's happening in the world of sports in the last week. I mean, that's what Sports Illustrated is. Right. So same thing, like I want my newsletter and your newsletter to generate business for you, but it's only going to work if somebody wants to read your magazine. So as simple as that all sounds, that's an hour discussion. Like, who's the audience? And that comes down to me, it's like, okay, I know it could be a lot of people, but who's the perfect client? I mean, like, if the phone were going to ring and on the other end is the perfect client, who is it? People can tell you that. Then once you do it that way, people are like, oh, okay. And again, they'll say stuff like, oh, it's a 30 to 50-year-old human. I'm like, well, okay, so you basically just described like working America. I get them to say, no, it's a 47-year-old woman with an MBA from Babson College who's a whatever. Because then they start to picture, this is my ideal client. And again, people are good at putting their finger on who it is. I'll even be like, okay, are they chatty or are they all business? Do they look at you as a peer or an expert? Have they been in business a long time or are they new? All that stuff is going to inform your newsletter. And then again, we talk about the subject matter, we talk about your voice. So now it does get into, what are you like? So, I like to be funny. Sometimes people will say, well, can you make our newsletter funny? And I'll say, well, are you funny? Because if you're not, even if they like your newsletter, if I make it funny and then you show up and they're like, who are you? There's no ideal personality. We all have clients who love us. So, I have clients who are very serious. That's just the way they are. I don't want it to sound like me. It needs to sound like them. The perfect compliment is somebody meets you and says, oh, Steve, you're exactly like your newsletter. Because that's all this is. It's a proxy for having lunch. with people. So there's a lot of discussion about how do you come across with your best client? And, I do draw people out. Most people, again, start off, the default is they're pretty serious professional stuff. But they start to get more comfortable with the idea that you're looking to attract people who are like your best client, because wouldn't you like to have 10 more clients like your best client, however you define that? So there's a lot of discussion. I mean, I don't let people get anywhere near the topic of like what color should the banner be until we figured all this out. Because everybody wants to talk about the design and all this, and I'm like, that's great, but until you lay all the groundwork, you're gonna spend a lot of time and not attract anybody. So there's a lot of that strategic, I guess, discussion.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's really about being genuine, being who you truly are. Like you said, when you meet somebody, it's like, yeah, that's really who that person sounds like, because that is that person. It's coming across as a genuine human being and not just trying to put up a front or a facade. So I know a big question that comes up in newsletters for a lot of people is, how often should I email? Is it weekly? Is it daily? Is it business days? Is it once a month? And that answer probably varies from one business to another. But do you have any gut feeling from your experience working with clients on what that is?
Yeah, I mean, it does vary. And somewhat it depends on what you're writing about. And also, when I say newsletter, the ones I work on typically are 600, 700, 800 words on a topic. So it's not just you had a thought. You could have one that's shorter. Like I have a separate blog that's like kind of a 200-word thing that I do much more frequently. But I find for most people and companies, once a month is right. The truth is, twice a month is a better pace in terms of the marketing of your business. I found that's perfect. Every week, that's kind of a lot. Almost all my clients are, almost all of them, not all of them, are once a month, because twice a month would kill them, because, you got a business to run. And the idea that you're going to write something that you're happy to send out more than once a month, I find it's just not going to happen. So I start everybody at once a month, and I say, look, you want to go more frequently after you do 6 in a row? We'll talk about it. But you don't want to start off too fast and then have to back off. Now, I publish mine every 2 weeks, but I don't have anything else to do. That's what I do. And I find that pace is really good. People think I publish weekly, even though I don't. But it's enough that it doesn't take over my life. I get a week off in between, like I published last Friday, so I get this week off, which even though I like doing it, it's nice to know I don't have to worry about it this week. In terms of time of day and over the weekend, I think it mattered in the days when we used to all shut our computers down every night, and certainly on Friday. I think it matters a lot less because it's a sort of a 7x24 thing. I try and think about when are people not in heavy delete mode. So even though you're on your phone 7x24, you're going to sleep. And I don't know, I find that when I wake up or get to my office, the first thing I do is delete as much as possible. So I don't really want your newsletter coming out overnight. I always like, kind of 10 in the morning. Maybe you're getting a cup of coffee. Again, what about people on the West Coast if you're on the East Coast? So, you kind of have to make a decision. But I don't think it matters for people like us nearly as much as like what time does Target send their email. That's more of a scientific, when are you going to click to buy thing. For us, again, it's just staying in front of people ongoing. And so I haven't found much difference for my own newsletter or my clients when we occasionally experiment with moving the day or the time. The truth is, the real question is, what can you commit to? Because the biggest problem is that your newsletter is never on fire. Like you never have to publish today. It's real easy to say, I'm really busy. I'm going to put it off. So I've been doing Fridays, for 20 years. I like the idea that when I come in on Monday, I can kind of see it out there 4 days away. But because I have a schedule, that makes me stick to it. And with all my clients, we come up with something. It'll be like third Thursday, second Tuesday. It doesn't matter. But I really, in the first year, really make sure they don't flinch on the day, because they will.
Yeah.
Let them. It's sort of like exercise. Like, if you've been exercising regularly, you don't need anybody telling you to go to the gym. But when you first start off, you need that guy who calls you up and goes, Steve, I'm going to meet you in 15 minutes.
Get out of bed.
That's a lot of what I do. I harass my clients going, okay, let's go. got to publish in 2 weeks. But once you get a rhythm going, yeah, then it just becomes part of your workday.
Yeah, and I find that fascinating too, because I've heard so much from so many marketers about, you've got to publish frequently. I mean, if not weekly, they're talking like daily even. And that is a huge chunk to bite off. And especially if you're a solopreneur and you have got your plate full with just getting your day-to-day business done, and you're going to say, okay, now I've got to write this every single week. I can see that could be to the point where it says, forget it, I don't have time for this. But can you make time for once a month or twice a month? That's certainly a lot more doable for most professionals. And I think that really takes the stress off of yourself by saying, yeah, I can do this. I can do this once a month. And I like that you said it, but also at the same time, you're saying you need to put a date on it, put a deadline. Somebody needs to get you on target and keep you going. Call Michael. Michael's going to help you stay on target. He'll harass you until you get it done.
And I would also add that we do sort of all the social media rebroadcasting of the newsletter much more frequently. So if you write a newsletter once a month, it's still going to go out on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and whatever else many more times. But those are different media. So, the thing about LinkedIn, for example, is in the time you and I are on this call, all these posts in LinkedIn have gone by and they're gone forever. Like, I'm not going to scroll back to see what someone posted 3 hours ago.
Right.
That's different than an email, which sits in somebody's inbox. So you have to sort of take into account that you have to send a lot of stuff through social media for anybody to notice, whereas I only have to send you one email because until you delete it, it sits there. I mean, that's one of the reasons email is so effective. There's still more presence for people, but I'm saying the writing of it, which is the hard work, once a month, and then everything from, I record my newsletter as a podcast, so it's audio. And then I put it on LinkedIn, and then I, do all kinds of other stuff. But the hard work only happens once, and then I just kind of repost it everywhere I can.
Right, it's repurposing existing content. It just makes sense. And you've even done the same thing with the book. As a matter of fact, you had a series of emails you did, and you dressed it up, and I have the book on my Kindle, as a matter of fact. Great book. The book, for those who are looking for, is called The Likeable Expert, 121 Funny Business Tips for Increasing Productivity. And it's really a great read. It's like you can get through the whole book in like an hour and a half, but I suggest don't read it straight through, or if you read straight through, come back and then read a tip a day, because it's really some great thoughts in there. I love it. And I encourage anybody to get that. One question I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, and I know I've really enjoyed this conversation. I just talked to you all day, Mike. What's next for you? I mean, is there something that you're growing into for your next year business? I mean, you're doing coaching, you're doing writing, you're helping folks across the nation, if not the world here, with newsletters. What's big on your plate coming up?
Well, I have to say I'm pretty happy with how it all sort of fits together. I mean, the nice part about not having a job is that, again, I had a job and it was fine, but it wasn't particularly taking advantage of what I was good at or what I liked. And this is both of those things. So I don't know. I mean, what's nice is that the clients keep changing, even though what I do is kind of similar. So it doesn't in any way feel monotonous to me, and just more of the same. I mean, I'll probably do another book. I've always say, publishing a book's like having a child. Every time you do it, you're like, I'm never doing that again. And then like a few years go by and you kind of forget how miserable the process is. And you have another one. So I'm kind of due for another one, maybe in another year. I have to say also, I like the physical aspect of it, because everything I do it's either talking or writing out, in the ether. So it's nice to have a book. So anyway, I occasionally will pull together and I just use pieces of stuff I already wrote. And then next thing you know, you have a book, which again, you really couldn't have done even 15 years ago as easily. Today, it's really easy and inexpensive to create a book. So that's probably the next thing.
Yeah, another great reason to have a newsletter, because you're putting the time and the effort into creating those thoughts and helping people. And then you can take that and turn, obviously it's not going to just take and dump it into a book, but you're going to take and use the core ideas from those articles and newsletters to build something that's lasting and has a legacy. I like that. Michael, this has been a terrific conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you and learn more about you? And if you don't sign up for any newsletter at all in your inbox, get Michael's. You're going to thank yourself for doing it. But where can they find it at, Michael?
You can find my website just at michaelkatz.com, Katz, K-A-T-Z, and you can sign up for the newsletter there. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Solopreneur Success Podcast. We hope you discovered valuable advice on how to start and grow your own successful solopreneur business. If you liked the podcast, you'll love the all-new Solopreneur Success Connections community at solopreneurcoach.com. Here you'll get exclusive access to our private, members-only community of business builders, free business building resources, and live online monthly training designed to accelerate your business success. Join us now at solopreneurcoach.com.
Hey, Solopreneurs, it's Steve Combs again. You can find all the show notes for this episode at solopreneurcoach.com/025. I hope you enjoyed this episode I pulled out of the vault of interviews I recorded last year, but somehow never got published. It's my bad, because you just heard Michael is the pro when it comes to email newsletters for solopreneurs. Make sure to head over to Michael's website at michaelkatz.com, that's K-A-T-Z, Katz, and subscribe to Michael's emails. They're like a twice monthly free demo of how to write effective newsletters. And when you subscribe, you'll also get his professional service providers' essential reading list and recommended resources. Next week, I'll share my recent interview with Sean Kunkler on the topic of sales made simple. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast now so you won't miss it. Talk to you next week.